Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a grief musician, author, and talk show host of tonight's show, where we get to take just half an hour, just a quick blip on our weekly radar to pause and learn how can we heal our own wounds as well. And this is what this show is probably going to be mostly about tonight, as how do we help others with theirs. When I was 13 years old, my mom passed away from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine, keeping super busy, and really avoiding grief and feeling at any turn. Well, as you can imagine, that didn't go so great. And eventually I had to face the music. I started going to counseling and I started realizing, wait a second, this thing that I've been avoiding, this grief and these hard emotions, once I work through them, not that we're ever over grief, it's so much better on this side. And so I wanted to spread the word and start a show and say, hey, let's all lean into our hard emotions together. And this is the big and of the night. I saw people struggle with how to help my family after my mom died. People didn't know how to talk to me. It was just awkward. And I know a lot of people wanted to help out more, but they didn't know how. So I wanted to fuse both of those premises and start a show where we get to learn about our own wounds and hear from people who've been on similar journeys to us and learn how do I crack this nut, as well as learn how can I love people better? Because that is something I hear all the time is people want to know what to say in situations they can't relate to. And man, oh man, does Donna have a show for us tonight for one of the hardest topics that we don't know how to approach, which is bereaved parents. Before I go on, I do have a couple of quick announcements. One, I would love to know that you're here. So if you don't mind in the comment section, just letting Donna and I know that you're here, that you're watching. We would love to go back through and see any and all comments that you had. Not only do we love to see you, whether you're watching live or as a replay, but we love to know what points stick out for you best. So that way we can kind of cater our shows and our talks to what you want to hear. So keep us posted in the comments as you hear things that you like or questions that come up. We want to hear from you. Last and final thing, you guys, is I kind of mentioned earlier, I do a lot. I'm a musician, I'm an author, and one of the things that I did create recently, which was really fun, is this cute little journal. And I just wanted to let everybody know that if you are on my email list, this upcoming Tuesday, when the summary email gets sent out, you will have the option to buy this at about 40% off wholesale price in exchange for posting about it. And I wanted to offer that to you guys. I think the price, again, I'm not making a dime off of it, right away is going to be in the low $5 range. It's Amazon Prime, so it ships for free. So if you want to help me kind of promote this and get an extreme discount on this, make sure you're on my email list. And then that way you can order copies of this cute little journal. Again, Donna and I both are huge believers in processing grief. And I think journaling is a tenet of that belief. So if you are interested, head on over to my email list. I do not spam. I just send one email a week. Happens every Tuesday morning. It's going to have all the show notes from tonight, how to contact Donna in case you miss it when I send it in the chat feature, as well as other little goodies like this and music updates. So all weather welcome, right? Wherever you are tonight, whatever cloud or sunshine you identify with most tonight, I am just so grateful that you are here. So thank you so much for being here. I know as I look at that, it's kind of a fun way to gauge how am I feeling, which is something I don't think we ask ourselves enough. So whatever little storm cloud or sunshine you identify with, that's okay. Be where you are tonight. So if you happen to know this, if you've seen it on social media, it's kind of all over the place. July is Bereaved Parents Month. The loss of a child is something. It's so inconceivable and it's so heartbreaking that so many of us don't know what to do. And sometimes we feel like kind of caught in between. We don't want to lean in too much. We don't want to be too distant. And all of it is confusing for, of course, the person trying to help. And I can't even imagine, literally, I cannot wrap my head around what it is like to lose a child. So tonight we have the one, the only Donna Mathiowetz back. She's an author of Unfinished by Design and a bunch of other books. So I'm going to bring her on the screen, and she is going to share her story, her wisdom as we dive into supporting bereaved parents. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate being here and sharing what I know with you and whoever's going to catch this now or later. Welcome.
Yeah. Oh, it is so good to have you. So before anything else, let's dive in to your story. And I'm going to bring up your sons onto the screen while I hide myself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, our journey of grief began, I guess I could say many years ago now, 29 years ago in 1992, March of 92. Our son, who's on the left there, that's Tim. He was 16 years old. And this particular evening, he went 5 miles west of town here. We live in Hastings, Minnesota. And 5 miles out of town, he went to a gathering of other kids, about a dozen teenagers, along with a couple other things that were going on at that point. I say there was kind of this combination of three things that could only end tragically, as they did for us. There are a dozen teenagers with their yet to be developed brains, which is very true. It's just they're not finished growing yet. There was some beer being consumed, and there was a 19-year-old acquaintance, no one we knew before this all happened, who carried a 44 caliber Magnum handgun. And that night, through poor choices being made on several counts, Tim was shot and killed instantly with that handgun by the owner of the gun. So that sent us into this dark world for a long, long time, and it's really a rough way to enter the experience of grief. As it was for you, Ricky, losing your mom at such a young age. Losing a child is that same kind of thing. So we grappled, we survived for a while. It was just about survival, and I typically know one of my goals is to help people go from just surviving, just making it, to actually thriving. Fortunately, through our faith, through a lot of people supporting and loving us, we began to thrive and now are thriving, using what we have learned other people. Oleg, right there with the fence cap on, he came into our lives a year and a half after Tim died. We were asked, and this is a whole other story which we don't have time to go into. I do include a full story of Oleg in my book, What Have You Done Since I Left? But Oleg came to us a year and a half after Tim died. He was a 15-year-old boy found in a Ukrainian orphanage, and he had cancer. Not exactly what I had in mind to be doing with my life at that point, but we couldn't think of enough good reasons not to say yes to his needs. It was just my husband and myself at home then. Our older daughter, Jill, had graduated high school before Tim died, was living on her own now, going to college, all those things. And so we had a couple empty bedrooms. We had an extra bathroom. I was home full time. I had a lot of time on my hands, and we decided that we could help. So we took Oleg in, and we did all the cancer, all the chemo treatments, 2 inpatient treatments with Oleg at Children's Hospital in St. Paul, and his life became more than I really believe more than he could ever have imagined. He embraced life to the fullest. He loved living here. And we chuckled. I'm sure he thought he had landed in heaven when he got to Hastings, and we were able to tell him there was even a better place than this. So Oleg died 6.5 short months after he came to us, but it was a blessing. He was like an angel sent to us. Not being able to be there with Tim as he died, I was there for Oleg all the time, and it was really a blessing for us to be given this opportunity to be a part of his short life here in America. But so we went from there and continued our journey, and have stories to tell. And I get the privilege of keeping our boys' memories alive because I get to tell about them so often as I speak and as we facilitate grief groups here in town. So that's how it all began.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Donna. I am so sorry for your losses. And of course, it's July. It's Bereaved Parents Month. I know this is a big question, but for those of us who either don't have kids or have kids but have never lost a kid. Could you maybe walk through just like into the mindset of where you and your husband were at when you found out about Tim's death?
Well, first of all, my husband was 100 miles away from home that night. So I was alone, except I had my two little nephews. They had come to spend the weekend while my sister and her husband flew to Tahoe for what was supposed to be a wonderful ski weekend. And hours after they left, this happened to us. So Dick wasn't home. I was there with the boys sleeping, and found out the news. He returned home like 6 hours later because of a terrible thick fog that blanketed the southern part of the state. And it took him that many hours to be transported from county line to county line with deputies from the different sheriff's departments to get him home safely through that bad weather. And so, he was in this, the poor man, all he knew was what my mother told him: get up, you have to go home, Tim's been shot and killed at a party.
Wow.
I knew just a little bit more than that, but not much. It was still, and you can't even take it in. You go into such a state of disbelief and numbness that, even if there was more things to know, we had to take that, God knows that we can only take so much at a time. And so it was, as it is with all grief, it's like, I tell people, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. It's a little bit at a time, because there's no way we could withstand all the pain we're going to experience in the coming months and years at one time. I really do believe we would just die. Our hearts couldn't take it, and we would stop. But so it was from different places, and finally Dick got home, and, we just began the journey. And fortunately, we had a strong marriage. And I know something we had discussed a little bit, Mickey, is about the effects on a marriage. Dick and I are very protective of other people and their marriages. So when we meet couples that come to our Gone Too Soon group, which is just for parents who are, suffering the loss of a child, we often, sometimes privately, we'll just say, how are you two doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes we see couples come a lot of time, but a lot of times it's a woman by herself. Her husband, for whatever reason, doesn't want to come. And, even though they try to explain, no, it's okay, there's other men there. There's such a difference in the grieving process between men and women. I mean, I think that's known, no matter what the loss might have been, we do it differently. Women can be much more open, much more willing to show their emotions. And men, I believe, a lot of men to some degree are afraid to begin to even let it out at all. And so they keep it in. There's many dangers in not expressing and not talking about it. But one is that if you don't let it out, it's going to come out somehow. It'll come out through anger or, other ways that kind of, I say, it shoots out sideways. And then you end up hurting the people who are standing there trying to be with you through this. Mm-hmm. And they don't know what to do with you either. So finding a way, and not that everybody's going to join a grief support group. That's certainly not the reality, but finding other ways then. Women, I think, also have the advantage of, we'll get together with other women and be okay with sharing some things with those that we can trust and who we believe are in our corner and are willing to listen. Men, again, I think it's harder to find a group of men outside of a grief group who are going to be comfortable with you expressing any kind of emotion and any tears. And so they just don't talk about it. And that means that lets other people assume that they must be doing okay. He seemed fine to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I so appreciate you bringing that topic up, because that was one thing. I've known a couple couples who, after a child passes away, they end in divorce. And like you said, you and I both value marriage so much, and that is so heartbreaking. So kind of a follow-up question to that. Let's say like you said, it's kind of the normal couple where the wife is a lot more open and wants to talk about it. Mm-hmm. The husband doesn't feel like he has the freedom. Is there a way us outsiders can support their different styles? Is there anything you've noticed that works for, in particularly, the men?
Yeah. Yes. And it's something I've suggested. Sometimes I've posted, usually around Father's Day. I kind of do a reminder for people that, if you're a friend of another man who has lost a child, it doesn't matter, is this their first Father's Day or their fifth or 10th Father's Day? Could you just acknowledge that this might, and you don't have to put it on them, this should be a bad day, but just, even through a text to say, hey, bud, I'm thinking about Father's Day. Maybe this is kind of a hard day for you. So I'm just thinking about you. Man, I tell you that little bit of effort, and it doesn't mean if you don't want to go face to face with, you don't want to do it in person. But that just says that, wow, somebody else is remembering with me. That's just so important, just to acknowledge, just to validate. And you don't have to say, you must be having a terrible day. Say, I don't know how this is for you. I'm just thinking maybe it's kind of tough,
Yeah.
and if they've come to a place where there's been enough healing, and it's really just, not that they don't think about it. I think anyone who's lost a child, I can't believe that they can still think about that would not cross their mind, when they have other children around them. That's how it is for me. And it's been, almost 30 years. I think of Tim and Oleg often, of course, but I especially think of them this past Mother's Day and Dick on Father's Day, because even though we're blessed to have other children and we've got 3 grandchildren and we get to spend time with them on those days, I just think I wish Tim was walking through the door. He should be coming here with his wife and my other grandchildren. And I think that's one of the toughest things. And if we want to transition here a little bit, Mickey, to talk about the losses that other people don't always think about, to realize, when you lose, and I was thinking about you and your mom this morning, before doing this tonight. I'm thinking I would guess you could relate to some of this too, because what you hurt for is what they missed out on because they weren't here. I mean, for us, it was, Tim wasn't here for his sister's wedding. He didn't get to graduate high school. He never had a driver's license. He never had a first job. I mean, goodness, at 16, you haven't even started to experience what all kids look forward to. Graduations and his friends getting married and his friends having babies, and you name it, it just goes on and on and on. And I think if other people, and as I going back to you, I thought, just like you I know you yearn for your mom to be there for your wedding day. And if you're gonna have children, you want, even though there's many cases where might be a wonderful step parent in that spot, but it's not the same. There's still that other person that you wish could have seen all this. And so I think there's some similarities in that as we grieve for the future, and what will never be. I've been doing this so long now that, do I miss Tim? Certainly, as I just mentioned. But I think the toughest part is still maybe overshadowing it all is the missing him for certain things. When my daughter and her husband moved into their first house and we helped them move and clean the old house, and all that's like, Tim would be here. He was a strong, muscular young man, and he'd be here for all that. And he's not, and that's what's painful. So I think that might be kind of a revelation for some people who've not known anyone very well who's ever lost a child, that these are the thoughts we have, even though these are happy and celebratory events. There's this little thing that continues to always be there, in our hearts, in the back of our minds, and it doesn't necessarily wreck our day, but it makes you just sad at moments. And you realize there's nothing we can do, and this is the 30th Mother's Day, and yet I'm just saying this to say I still have to have this little moment where I think of that, and then try to just move on and be blessed with what I do have and not what I don't have.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. I'm over here crying. I so appreciate you and in your stories. And we've talked on the show about, supporting grievers a lot. And we kind of came up with this target where you've got your immediate people in the middle, which is those 911 people who you call right away when a tragedy happens. And then it kind of echoes out from there. So on days that are Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, all the days that could potentially, all the way down to the days, like you said, moving day, that's perhaps not. How could you maybe give a couple examples on how different levels of friendship can help out? Because I feel like if I don't know, is it different for people who are in that immediate circle versus someone who's like, I barely know you, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking of you?
Yeah. Certainly, I think because those in the outer circle, they'd be the ones kind of going, I don't know, should I say anything? Shouldn't I? No, I don't want to be insensitive, but I don't want to, as I said earlier, assume that they're having a bad time. But,
Yeah.
I think, as you encounter these people who are grieving or mourning the loss of their loved one, if they say anything that seems like it's an open door, to the what they may have been feeling or thinking about. I think it gives you the okay to say something else, you know, and even to say, so how was your Mother's Day? Because that's a general question. So, did you have a good weekend? Or did you see your kids? We talk about those things very freely, and maybe to say, I bet it's hard though. I mean, I assume it's still hard though, always will be, that he's not here for your Mother's Day. I don't think there's anything dangerous about that. If the person who's had the loss doesn't want to talk about it, they'll change the subject. They'll turn it around quite fast. But I think that gesture just means so much, because the longer time goes on, and the more we realize people, or at least it seems to us that people are forgotten. I don't think
Mhm.
that, because I'm so out there with ours, that I know people know that I haven't forgotten, but many people speak very little of this terrible loss as years go by. I remember when we had the Tim died, I all of a sudden I met some people that I've known for years, and then they shared that, oh yeah, we lost a child 25 years ago. It's like, I didn't know that. I don't, so I'm hearing that. I heard it more and more as I shared. It's like, now people are willing to tell me. Of course, I know they think I'm a safe place because I understand. And so I think it's all about the person in the grief journey deciding who their safe people are, and who are those that, and then you find those, and that's a whole other topic, finding those that you just have to, you steer away from. You don't, because you realize they don't get it, and we don't have the energy to teach them, so, nor the words to tell them what it really is like.
Direct them to the show. Just send them the link and
Yeah,
say, you
that's
should
right.
watch this
It'd
show.
be safer there, then no one would get angry.
Oh, yeah. Well, and to that point, like you said, leaning into those people, that is so wonderful. And I hope all of us listening, whether live or as a replay, take that and take that seriously. And remember, like, this loss just doesn't go away. It is
No.
so important for us to keep bringing it up. And I know on another show when we had you on in the past, you mentioned memories. Can you maybe dive into how those of us who knew a child can maybe
Oh.
help a parent out in a way that somebody who's on the outside would just not
Yes,
know how to
and
help?
this could be, soon after, or even a long time after, just to share a story. I tell people, send a text, send a card, make a call, share a story, say their name. That is of vital importance, to hear your loved one's name, whether it's your mom or your son or your dad, or whoever it is, right? We want to hear their name, because we don't want them to be forgotten. And I think that's especially important with a child loss, especially when it's been a younger child, and they weren't here long enough to make a big imprint on most people's lives, certainly not their society or their community. But to say, even on, and this can maybe be out of the blue, to say, I was thinking about something. I have this story that I remember about Tim. Is it, can I share it with you? And of course, I will readily say, yes. I've got, a few people that have done that with me, and even though they actually don't know, but they've repeated that story, I don't care. Tell me the same story again, because that means you're recalling him. And there's some good things about social media with that, because you can recognize the anniversary of him being gone. And then people are usually very loving and generous, and they say things on, they comment on and say things that they probably don't have the courage to say to anyone in person. So there's a good side to all that as well. And I didn't have any of that. We're talking 30 years ago. It was the
Right.
dark age. It was the dark ages back then. It was like very isolating, really. There was a lot of time I felt very alone in all of it.
I so appreciate you saying that, because that's something that is so easy. If you knew the person, that's so easy to do.
Yes.
Something simple. I played
Yeah.
basketball and I had a lot of fun, and
Yes.
he was a really good 3-point shooter.
That's right.
Simple. And I
Yes.
think that's so important for us to remember. And
Absolutely.
as we kind of come to our close here, I would love for people to kind of the last question before you kind of say again, how can we find you and all that stuff is, let's say I know someone who recently lost a child. Where would you tell me to direct them if it seems like, oh my gosh, they don't really have a community?
Yeah. Well, if you want to do a little homework, find out if there is a grief support group of some kind in the community. I think there's such great value in those gatherings, because it's a safe place. You don't have to explain or make excuses, or I tell people, you come every first or third Wednesday to our Gone Too Soon group. I don't care if you're sad, if you're angry that night, if you're feeling okay, like you've had a pretty good week. You just come, and there's no, just like what you just talked about with that journal, all weather is welcome.
Yeah.
It's true, whatever it is. But I mean, I think there's great value, and also what I didn't have back then is all the resources online. I would recommend a man named David Kessler. He's on Facebook. He's written some beautiful books. The last book was about the sixth stage of grief, which he calls meaning, finding meaning. I've read it a couple times, and he shares lots of people's stories. So, if you have resources that you can recommend, even though if you're not a grieving person, it might be harder for you to know what to recommend. But, using the internet, and there's some people that are that I feel are off the wall, and I don't always agree with their view on things, and that's okay. We can just go to a different one then, or find things like the Healing Half, or books, and things that are just out there ready for us to peruse. And if we like them, we can, and if we don't, we go on to something else.
I love that. And speaking of resources, you yourself are quite the resource. So I would love for you to remind people one more time what you do and where to find you.
Okay, well, my business is called Unfinished by Design, so I do a lot of speaking for all kinds of groups, not just grief groups, but businesses and corporations, and churches, and many venues I've done. I talk about grief, loss, and resiliency. That's the topic I find is very helpful to people. And I also am an author, so I've authored a journal for your journey, which is just kind of very short, 1 or 2 page little entries from my experience after Tim's death, followed by a page or two where you can write a little bit. It's not overwhelming, it's not intimidating, but it's a great way to kind of work through some of those topics that are important to think about as you grieve. And my latest book is called What Have You Done Since I Left? Again, the kind of the full story of Tim, and of Oleg, and of our foster children, and of our adopted special needs child. So God has given us quite a story, and I finally got it on paper. That was my COVID victory. I finished and got it published during COVID, because I thought, if you don't use all this quiet time to get it done now, I think you should just give up and forget it, because no better time. So I did accomplish that, and that was a great feeling. Yeah.
Oh, well, Donna, we are so blessed by you. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody watching, whether live as a replay, give Donna a big thank you. We are just so grateful for you. I'm so sorry for your losses that you have this insight. However, we are just so grateful that you are using your story to help others, and especially this July with Bereaved Parents Month. I cannot think of a better. I didn't know July was Bereaved Parent Month. You just happened to be on the schedule, and it was like, oh my goodness, God is good.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you, Donna. Well, everybody, I think the world of Donna, and I am just so glad that we together got to hear her story and take those resources with us and put them in our tool belt. And of course, if you are a grieving parent, please, please, please know my heart is with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I do have 2 things left for you guys before we wrap it up. If this triggered anything inside of you and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to go process or I need to go reach out to somebody, I would just encourage you to follow that. If somebody popped into your mind, you're like, geez, I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know his son died a long time ago. Do it. Just send a message, follow that intuition. And it's amazing where those things can go. But I'd also encourage you to check out My Heart Still Remembers, which is my grief workbook. And you can buy this as a gift for people. So if you want to have, if you have that person, you're like, hey, I just wanted to send this. My friend Mickey wrote it after her mom died. I really encourage you to check that out. That link is in the comments. And on that note, because I am a musician, and this is Bereaved Parents Month, there is no song that I would rather play for you guys other than My Heart Still Remembers, which one of the things that Donna talked about really strikes me as, it just cuts my heart up. And it's the fact that the world seems to move on and we're stuck and we're so brokenhearted and we remember, but it seems like the world doesn't. So that's what this song is about. And I just wanted to play it. The link for this song, it's Mickey Spear. Quick links. You can just see it in the comments. If you haven't yet, you can download it. You can buy, you can stream it on Spotify. It's a great song to pass along to bereaved parents and to say with a story, perhaps, hey, I haven't forgotten about your child. Here's a story I love about them. And here's a song my friend Mickey wrote. I think you're really going to like it. I love hearing your guys' stories. And actually, Donna mentioned Father's Day cards, fatherless Father's Day cards. I'm on a mission this year to create cards that kind of fit the gaps you're not going to find at Hallmark. So in addition to unassuming Father's Day cards that were available, I've got one coming up that will be available by the time the summary email comes out for bereaved parents in particular, that you can send them a specific memory. It's going to be a memory card, specifically kind of guiding you through, hey, thinking of you, here's a memory. And hopefully that's just a really easy way for you to touch base with people. So without further ado, here's My Heart Still Remembers. This town keeps buzzing, it looks the same. It's been a while since they've said your name. And yes, I know it seems like the world has moved on, but my heart still remembers every little thing. Your eyes, your smile, your laugh, your love, the way you felt when you held me. My heart still remembers. It's where you'll always be. Your spirit pulses through my veins with every new heartbeat. Sometimes the pain goes from flames down to embers, but my heart still remembers. Yes, my heart still remembers. Thank you all so much for being here. I will see you next week.